want to kick off today on When Friends Come Over. My new friend, Michelle, who is from Texas originally, right?
Oregon, but moved from Texas to Portugal.
Yes. And so that was, yeah, you moved from Texas to Portugal. Is that like 2 years ago now, right? Like
Yeah.
during
hmm
COVID?
Yes.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for choosing to spend some time with me. And I thought that you would be such a great person to have on the When Friends Come Over podcast about how to meet people. Because, I mean, obviously there's all of your story that will definitely help play a part in your knowledge in this, but also because I just find it cool that we met at an axe throwing party.
It was epic. We got so much anger out and made friends along the way, and it was wonderful.
Yes. So thank you, Michelle, for being up for it. I want to dive right in and ask you just like maybe you have some stories with it, but like, what is someone really interesting that you've met along the way and how did you meet them?
Mm. Actually, the person that we mutually know is the first person who came to mind is my good friend Therese, who she is just the most fabulous, vibrant person. And I feel so lucky to have met her here in Portugal. She's such a good example to me of someone who is a good connector and someone who shows up authentically and kindly in her relationships. And as you noticed, I'm sure from the axe throwing event, she knows literally everyone, and is so inclusive and fun. And the way that we met, actually, I think we got connected originally on Instagram because we both have public accounts for our businesses. And so I was originally drawn to her content. And then we ended up having a very good mutual friend who then connected us in person in that way. So it was, I think we would have met eventually anyway, but Lisbon is a small community. So we did eventually meet and then became good friends.
Amazing. So you and your husband relocated and moved to another country. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges that come with that. So I would love to know what were some of the things that maybe you either individually or you as a couple chose to do to recognize that, hey, we are choosing to relocate, but we know that means that we're going to have to step out a bit more. So what are some things that you intentionally did? Definitely solo, but also as a couple to go, how are we going to put ourselves out there more?
I love this question. So, one of the reasons we moved is because we wanted to build a better community. And we were in Austin, Texas, which is a very transient community. We were knee deep in the pandemic and just felt pretty isolated and like we were ready for a big change. And so, when we moved to Lisbon, our goal was to broaden our community. And we frankly had not flexed the skills in doing that. It's something we probably could have figured out how to do while we were in Texas, but we thought, okay, this is a big time of transition. Let's figure out how to do this. And one thing that we did, this was by happenstance, but we were putting out content online and
Yes.
people knew who we were. And one thing we did early on that I think really helped us is that we said yes to everything, because we had not yet honed the skills on how to vet who's going to be a good connection and who's going to be a good fit, and how
Sure.
do I best represent myself in a way that's going to create genuine community in the way that I'm looking for it. So when we first landed, people would reach out to us for advice on moving, or they had moved here too and were looking for a community, and we said yes to everybody. And after quite a bit of practice in this, we realized that this wasn't sustainable. We're not naturally extroverted people.
Right.
It just wasn't a great use of our energy, and we were coming back with these kind of like funky experiences where we were like, well, it's not like it was bad, but I don't think this is like exactly the right fit for me to want to continue to invest in a relationship, or as what often happens when you're in a transient community or in a group of expats, people may not be staying for all that long. And
Yeah.
so
Right.
if you are looking for long-term friendship or deep connection, sometimes that can be different than a person who's traveling through town for a month or two.
Mhm.
Sometimes. So for us, the initial thing that I think we did really well was getting a lot of practice in meeting new people.
Would you, I guess, going back to that, is there anything else now that you've been there for a little bit, is and to any, I guess, culture that you go into, is there anything else that you would have maybe added to kind of like fast track that deeper connection with
Mm,
people?
that's a good question too. I think for us, because we were unpracticed, we just didn't know. But now what I know is that when I go, I can get a good gut sense out of early conversations if someone is interested in a genuine connection.
Hmm.
And I know that if I'm showing up with my most
Right.
authentic self, it is more likely for that radar of who I am to be picked up by people who are wanting to receive it. And so, whether that means me going to activities that mean a lot to me and meeting other people who have similar interests, or when I meet people, trying to be as open to opportunity and open with myself and generous with my experience in a way that may be a little bit vulnerable, but that it puts the signal out, and then you can kind of assess on both sides, is this a great fit? And I think I've just gotten a lot better at being able to do that in a clearer way.
What would you say are some of the mindsets, because you're such, an observer of people, and I'm sure from all that you do as well, through traveling and things like that, you just observe people and you pick up on people's energies and things like that. I would love to know from either your own experience or from just observing people and learning about cultures and things like that, what do you think are some of the biggest mind blocks that actually stop people from making those new connections and being bold to step out?
Hmm. I think for me, I come from a very yes and place. And I'm looking for someone who also is coming from a, like, I'm a positive, I'm going to be supportive, I am open. And when I meet somebody who is maybe more negative or is as more closed off or is maybe not as supportive very early on, that says to me we're not going to meet energies. I can't speak for their experience because maybe there are groups of people that is a positive interaction for them. But for me, I have noticed that if I just come with a very positive, open energy, my outcomes tend to be more positive, and that's what I'm looking for in other people as well, is a curiosity, an excitement and an interest in life and other people, asking
Mm.
questions, getting to know each other, and a genuine interest and respect.
Yeah. How, I guess though, I think as well that can be quite draining for someone who recognizes that they want that, but they are, I guess, more of an introvert. And
Mhm.
like you were saying, if you're more naturally introverted, it does take a lot to kind of, um, I guess, keep growing that muscle. And I think what I would imagine is that there's a sense of like rejection that a lot of people have to overcome with meeting new people, especially when it's kind of like, I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and you're kind of like, why can't meeting new people be like that in the park where you go, oh, we're playing on the swing, let's play on the swing together. Oh, we're best friends now. I met you five
Yeah.
minutes ago. But, it doesn't, because of all the things that happen through life and our sense of rejection. I guess to me, I would love to just encourage someone and hear your tips for them on someone who really wants that and can see that, yeah, I can see that I have that within me, but like I've just dealt with so much rejection. But I also want to like have these experiences of meeting new people, but the rejection just really shuts them down. Any thoughts
Yeah.
or tips you can give?
Yeah, I think I come to many situations with the idea that, like, the right way to say this, I love alone time with myself. I love I'm happy by myself. I also really deeply need good friendships, but I also like I'm great with who I am. And so one thing that has been helpful for me is that if I present the things that I like about myself, and then if someone else also likes those things, that's a positive thing. And I feel like if someone else doesn't appreciate them, I guess I don't internalize that as rejection because
Mm,
it just doesn't feel like the right fit. And that person, like, we are not the people for each other. And so for me, it's maybe like it might just be a different, like a reframe or a different way to approach new relationships, because you want especially as someone who doesn't have the energy to boundlessly meet a lot of different people and hold space for a lot of different people, I'm precious with who I give that energy to. And so
Mm,
it's just as important to me that their signals, the things I'm learning about them, vibe with me, as it is that, what I'm sharing is of value as well. And so for me, if a relationship is not, hitting the ball and then running, I don't know if that's the right metaphor. If the
it works.
relationship is, thank you, if it is not that simple, or as if it does not light me up in the same way, that's not a failure. That's
Mm,
just not the right, maybe not the right time or not the right person, or maybe maybe it's a slower burn. But
mhm.
I don't think about it as rejection
Yeah.
in that same way.
No, that's beautiful. And I think reframing it of going, it isn't at all about you. And I think that that's just whatever past experiences to just keep on uh trying if you recognize it is something that you recognize, actually meeting people. Because I guess for me, this is definitely, this particular one is for people who may have, especially through COVID, I think a lot of people lost relationships. Or for
Yeah.
anyone who's just going through a breakup and you were so solely in that relationship and you recognize that you're wanting to put yourself out there more, but it is vulnerable, and that the world is often now through their phone, and you're having to reinvent how you meet people. And not even just relationships wise, but I think friendship more so, where you go, I just want to do life with some great like-minded people, but I've reinvented myself and I don't want to go back to those old friendships. Yet
Yeah.
it's so easy to do that, yet I don't want to get rejected. So it's all of those things that I would imagine that I've had to go through, that I can just imagine how difficult it is. And I think, I guess the other kind of question I want to morph into is that you can go to meetup groups and you can go to like gyms, and there's all of those amazing things online that are available to, I guess, spark your interest to find things that might be of like-mindedness. But even going to gyms and going to meetup groups, there still takes that extra confidence of like, yes, well done for showing up. But I would love to know, because you have this beautiful natural confidence that comes across with no ego. It's literally just an effortless confidence. So what
Thank
kind
you.
of like advice would you want to give to someone who is at like an event, but it's kind of like, oh, I'm here. Oh, how do I be the one that initiates? I know I have it within me, but like, what can I do that's beyond the what do you do?
Well, thank you so much for the compliment. I appreciate it. I think for me it is, maybe there is a bit of like overconfidence, that I think I can have a conversation with anybody. I think I can find most everyone interesting in some way. Everyone has something to
Mhm.
offer. Everyone has something that I would like to know more about. And so I think asking questions for me is like a fun game. I love getting to know people. I love learning about people. That doesn't necessarily mean that all of these people are going to be my best friends, but I think when you're interacting with people, people want to know that you're coming from a genuine place, and everyone likes to be asked questions about themselves. So I think when I enter a room, I don't have a lot of fear about, and or like asking someone a question about themselves. And if they're meeting me with other open energy, hopefully they're saying something that is so different from my world experience that I can just like sink my teeth into and learn so much about. And so to me, I I don't know that this is amazing advice, because this is just, I think, a personality trait of mine. But I I do think entering a room feeling confident that like there are interesting things happening here. You just have to go and find them. And hopefully
Ooh,
that gets met with the same energy. And then you
I
can
love
make
that.
those connections.
But just, I think it is about having that mindset of going, wherever I've chosen to enter, there's going to be interesting things that I can learn about. And I think that that is such a great mindset reminder. And just as you were saying that, I was like, absolutely, what comes effortless to you is also your superpower that other people would want to learn from. So to me, it's like, actually, you
Mm.
know what? Although that is something, we often forget our own superpower of going, oh yeah, gee, I know how to, that's like the easiest thing to do. And to someone else, it's the hardest thing, but it is also something that they can learn from. So I think that's something that I hope would be an encouragement. Even to me, I'm like, yeah, actually, I could probably enter some more rooms with a bit more of a radar of there's interesting things happening, but I am not asking enough questions or showing enough curiosity. So just on a practical level, do you have like any little nuggets of questions of going, okay, although this is not stolen, but it's like I've got a question ready because I learned it from Michelle.
I feel like I have a Rolodex of quick questions, and having learned
Wonderful.
to having moved to Europe, I try to pull the what do you do for work card very far to the back, because in the US it's the very first card. And so that, that was a practice for me
Celebrate
that
that.
that but I'm especially if it's a woman, but even if it's a well-dressed man, if I love something that, that's going on with their outfit, or, oh, your earrings are so interesting. Tell me about that. Oh, that tattoo looks really interesting. Is there a story there? So even the more superficial things can be my first go to. I also now love learning about where people are from, and their journey to why they're here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when I'm in spaces where I'm at someone else's party and there's a new person that I don't know, I like finding out how did they meet the person who they're here to see,
Yes.
and what brought them here. And that often leads to, well, I do this for work, so I don't have to ask. This is how we met, or we take this class together, and I really enjoyed this class. And then you can ask about the class. You can ask about, oh, you got those earrings on a trip to Egypt. I've never been. I'd love to hear more about what that trip was like. Do you have any tips? It's on my short list. Yeah. So just having a few even superficial things you can notice and then
Mm-hmm.
dig further into.
What do you find with that? Because I absolutely think that that is an amazing skill. And I would imagine that you're very good at kind of like discerning those situations when you are meeting people. Because I also know for me, not that it at all is about dimming my spirit or energy, because I don't want to be around people who I think that is happening to, where I feel like someone's like trying to like squish my light or energy. I'm like, well, no, then
Mhm.
that's fine. We don't need to hang out. But what do you do when you recognize, actually, sometimes I can come across pretty intense if I'm like, my thing of like, is this an interrogation, or are we like on an interview, or are we just trying to be friends? So do you ever have to manage that, or like figure
A
out how to not
hundred
come
percent.
across?
Not everyone is comfortable answering 1 million questions about themselves.
Mhm, mhm.
And so I am learning to read the room a little better about, I really get curious and excited. And sometimes I think it can feel like this one person is maybe feeling embarrassed that they maybe feel that they're taking over the conversation, even though I'm like bullying them
Right.
into a corner, asking them 1 million questions. So it is a delicate match, a delicate balance. But I also find sometimes, if nothing else is going on in the conversation, if I'm the only one who's putting effort into moving the conversation forward, I also sometimes keep doing it because I'm like, I want other people to feel comfortable. And sometimes, maybe they're not used to talking about themselves, but
Yeah, yeah.
I still, I still do want to get to know them, and I want to understand them and understand even maybe why they're bringing the vibe that they're bringing, even if it's
Right.
not as open as, that people don't always feel that open when they're in spaces. They can feel awkward. And so maybe
Yeah.
it's just feeling like, oh, I have an acquaintance here who knows a little bit about me, to
Yes.
feel a little bit more comfortable. So while I am sensitive to it, I, I usually acknowledge it. I say, oh, I'm sorry. Am I, am I asking you too many questions? And it usually lightens the mood. And
Diffuses, yeah.
yeah. So I don't consider it is something I'm aware of, but I don't consider it to be something I'm too worried
No.
about.
But I think it's such, in terms of like someone who might be like, I can't do that. I'm not like, I'm either not comfortable talking about myself, or I don't necessarily love asking questions. And it's like, I
Mm,
think to me, it's actually a great, if you're not comfortable talking about yourself yet, then get really comfortable asking questions.
yeah.
I think that that's a win-win situation, just to have that in your wheelhouse and to be able to just test it out and put yourself in a situation where, you know, I think that's where sometimes it just takes the bold step of going, I just need to try. And if
Yeah.
you fail at that, go to a different setting, environment, and just, I think, keep trying until you feel a bit more of alignment, because I totally think that it will, it will happen for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And something that's coming to mind for me is that a practice that I found very helpful was taking improv classes because like even if you're never ever planning to perform improv, it's a really good practice in taking someone's idea and adding on to it, moving on with the moment. And of course, their big phrase is yes and.
Mm,
So the goal is to build on whatever they're saying. You don't want to turn down their ideas, and so it's a great practice in being very open and listening and adding on. And so I think if someone were really feeling like, oh, I'm uncomfortable in these spaces where I don't know what's coming next, or I don't know who's going to say what, or this silence is making me a little uncomfortable, taking a few classes where you're practicing in a game environment, in a safe
mm.
environment where the goal is to put yourself out there, can be a good start to flexing those muscles.
Yes, for sure. Do you know, as you were just saying that, it fully reminded me of, I guess it's that it's almost like in that 15 minutes, like say you've booked into the meetup group, or say you've booked in to
Hmm.
go, you know what, I'm going to go sit in a coffee shop and intentionally try and talk to three people, or
Hmm.
I'm going to go and do this in this environment, or go to this gym class. I think it's in those, you can book in for it, but then it's in those, like that period where you're like, oh, I'm about to chicken out. I think, are you a fan of Ted Lasso at all?
Yes, love Ted Lasso. Yes.
Okay, I remember our mutual friend, we were very much, I was like telling her, I'm like, this is a great show. It just reminded me of the episode where Rebecca talks to herself and she kind
Hmm.
of becomes really big.
Yes. Yes.
And I guess as you were saying that, it was kind of like, you know what, in those moments before we, I guess it's like before you're going for a job interview, before you do anything that's a little bit out of your comfort zone, to just have a moment with yourself and being like, you are going to do this because you really are wanting to expand and grow. And yeah, it'll be out of your comfort, but you're so capable. I can't remember what it was. I just remember she has this moment with
Yeah.
herself, right?
Yeah. And what I love about that is, as a viewer, we know that she is powerful and
Mm,
capable of all these things. And I feel like I want everybody to feel like they deserve to take up space in the places that they're in.
mm,
And sometimes I think the fear and the shrinking can come from a place of feeling like maybe you don't deserve to be there, or people won't accept
mm.
you, or whatever. And this is not to say that all interactions will go pleasantly, but they're all a learning experience, and you
Yeah,
do deserve to be there, and you do deserve
yeah,
to feel, like you can be yourself. And if being yourself isn't the right vibe for that room, that's not a failure. That's just something that you've learned. And we don't need to go do that again. We'll try something a little bit different and see if you can build on each experience, feeling like it's really more about finding the right fit and less about doing the right thing, I
yes,
think.
because you want to belong.
Yeah.
I want to give all of my guests a scenario of what they would do in this situation. So say you were the host in this situation, and you've invited, like say there's like 10 people, and maybe one or two of them are just brand new,
Mm.
but you recognize that you're like, I want to make these people feel not over the top comfortable, but I want them to just feel so like they belong. But I'm aware that there's going to be people who have those conversations that are like not inclusive of the new people. So just
Yeah.
maybe what kind of
Yeah.
tips would you give to a host who is aware that they want to make this feel great for the new people?
This is actually a scenario that gives me a lot of anxiety. This is not my strong suit. I am not a
Okay.
host. I really rarely bring large groups of people together. I'm a small group of people person.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but our mutual friend is the queen of bringing people together. And so, especially since watching her and seeing her host events, I've learned so much because she's so good at making everyone feel welcomed and introduced. And even at the event that we were at, she had made such a thoughtful game out of saying
Mm.
one new thing or one interesting fact about each person, and it was all listed on a sheet of paper, and then you had to go around the party and try to find
Yes.
who was matched to that that piece of information, that fun fact. And of course, this was for a party of, I don't know, what, 40 people? There was a lot
Yeah,
of
sure.
people.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
this is an exaggerated experience. But I do feel like um, the things that I've learned from her is, one, she sets expectations really beautifully. So I feel like I always know what is coming when I
Mm,
show up to see her. Um, and and I find that very comforting as someone who does experience a little bit of social anxiety, and that's probably why I don't tend to invite people over or bring
yeah.
different groups of people together. Um, and so I'm thinking about, what would she do if I had to guess. She's the type of person who knows and thinks the loveliest things about all the people she's brought in the group. And
Mm,
even if they're brand new acquaintances, she has something
hmm.
nice to say, like to pull out of her back pocket to say, "Oh, you two might have this thing in common," or
Yes.
"This person does this really interesting thing." And it might just be
Yes.
that conversation starter to ignite that, maybe the person who's a little bit more comfortable, to ask more questions and get that conversation going, to get the party to feel a little bit more like
Mm.
it's gelling.
I love that, and thank you so much for your like honesty in that one too. And I think that something about just intentionality. Hey, that is such a key part in you showing up. If you would be okay with answering, say like the other side of the scenario, you're the new person that comes along to an
Mm.
event, and
Mhm.
absolutely, how have you in the moment like handled those like social anxieties of showing up to something where it is a smaller gathering and you're kind of like, oh, I've said yes, I've met these new people, and now I've gone into their house. What was I thinking? This is so too much. Where the hell's the bathroom? What am I doing? Where's all the escape routes? Like fully, I guess, yeah. Do you have a sense of like, hey, I'm showing up, I've given myself this time? Yeah. How have you handled that anxiety?
Yeah, I don't think I experience a ton of anxiety being new in a space. I think because I approach it with, I'm hopeful that there's someone there that I can have an interesting conversation with. And I am okay either just observing or reaching out to the person next to me and trying to spark up a conversation. Um, I I know that this is not the case for everyone, but I do think, it is on each person to kind of own their own experience. And so it's my hope that
Mm, mhm,
feel if you like I would hope that people don't enter a space feeling like other people are in obligation of making them feel more comfortable.
so true.
So I'm hopeful that people can say, okay, like for me, when I enter a room, and especially now that I'm much more practiced at this, I know what makes me comfortable. I know what makes me uncomfortable, and I try to do my best to make sure that I'm setting myself up for something
Mm,
positive. But if it's not going great, then I'm then pocketing stories for later that I think are funny. And so it's always a learning experience. There's always a takeaway. There's always,
mm,
even if it's a miserable night, there's there's always something that I then laugh about later. That I'm like, oh
right.
man, that was rough. Like, ugh. So to me, I yeah, I hope that people can enter spaces and take ownership for the experience that they're having. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be positive, but that they can not feel like they're powerless in a situation, that they feel that they can enter a room
Mhm.
empowered.
I couldn't love that answer more. I think you're so right that it is on us. I think it's on yourself to resource yourself with enough information to come into those situations feeling a sense of yourself, ultimately absolutely showing up as yourself, and knowing that if you're not accepted as yourself, then you should feel comfortable to leave and not spend time there. If you recognize, going, you know what, they're doing things that I'm not comfortable with, it's not in line with me at all, I'm not even curious about it, then it's like you have the absolute right to get out of there.
Yeah.
So I think that's such a great thing of going, yeah, we do have ownership to yeah, show up as ourselves, but also to be responsible for having a good time. That's like, I love that. And I need to remind myself that more of, and not put the expectations on other people. But thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so thankful for your time. And I have maybe like two more questions. I think
Yeah, yeah.
there are also the challenges of people seem really disconnected
Mm,
too, and very consumed by themselves and advancing themselves. And I guess a little bit
mm.
lacking in that sense of like otherly minded, community minded, and just, you know, you're walking and you're kind of like, oh, I really hope when I walk today I like lock eyes with someone and like, you know what, I'm like, I see this
Mhm.
person and I think that they could be my friend. Oh, but they're on their phone and I've seen them the last 5 times and I just thought that we were gonna I don't know, I guess how do you uh see the world in terms of connection and building relationship? Are you hopeful that it's on a better track, or do you think we can be doing anything better to become more approachable and connectable?
This is such a fantastic question, and I do think that my response is filtered through the fact that I am not dating using online dating apps. I am married, and so I think dating apps really amplify a lot of the frustration of digital connection
Hmm.
and snap judgments and things like that. Um, for me, it feels like it's a holistic solution to building community in real life and online. One thing that was a big asset to us that I just didn't even know is that by having a public account and showing up semi authentically as myself, obviously it's for business, so it's not my like full personal self, but
Hmm.
it gave other people a sense that they knew a little bit about me, that
Hmm.
opened the door. And I found that when I was meeting other people, say I met someone on the street or I meet them at a party and we'd connect online. And then if they were more public with their information on, that doesn't mean they have a public account, but if they are sharing things that are interesting to them online, I then have a better sense of who they are. And
Sure.
most of my friends are people that I met briefly at a party or literally our closest friends right now. We met them on the street and we connected online, and after seeing kind of their behavior online a little bit, I was like, oh, I think we're really going to be friends. And so
Hmm.
by showing up authentically, I'm using quotations on that,
I
authentically as
get you.
yourself, and showing up a little bit as yourself, meaning maybe have a photo of yourself somewhere. Because I do find I've connected with people and the photo is of a flower, and then I'm like, I don't remember who that person is, or
Yes,
I don't really
sure.
get a good sense for who they are. And maybe I get that maybe this is a lot to ask of someone, but it is helpful. It's helpful to me because even after a brief interaction, I then can follow up over maybe a few weeks or maybe even a few months. And now I have information that I can say, okay, well, I can tell you were interested in that, like yoga class. Could I come with
Mm.
you?
Hmm.
Or, I'm going to this pizza place that you said you liked. Do you want to come with me? Or,
Yes.
things that might instigate a more full relationship because there are people showing up in this space where I'm seeing them on a more regular basis. It's hard to develop
Yeah.
a relationship if you're only seeing each other in one moment or one party or one, you
Right.
know, passing on the street. And so I would encourage people to do their best to show up, whatever that looks like for you, where you are connecting with people
Hmm.
online, like where you're having more regular interactions with people. For me, that's Instagram. And
Yes.
by showing up on Instagram, people then have a better sense for who I am, what my sense of humor is. I know what
Yeah.
they're about. And that has really helped me to build a community that I really love here because
Yeah.
it's easier to get those vibes and build on those.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really great way of looking at social media too, and a really positive way, because I think sometimes it can be a bit of like, oh, this is such a drain. But actually coming in with that mindset of going, you know what, actually, like I saw this meme the other day and someone told me they really like memes. Yeah, I never send them
Yes.
any. So like, why don't I be the one that sends it? Just because I know they'd appreciate that. And that's a new form of connection that we can have. And if it makes us laugh and if it's a positive energy, then it's just adding more value. So thank you for your observation on that. And I have one last question that I would love to wrap up and ask you about, because I definitely experienced it from you when we met. Is what would you say are like five, the numbers are relevant, but what would you say are some great um body language uh vibes, energies that help make someone feel more approachable and like, you know what, I want to meet that person? Or, hey, that's,
Mm.
I'm just curious, like, what do you think just helps go, you know what, that person looks like someone I want to meet and they look open to meeting?
Wow. Yeah. I have always had a weird habit of like strong direct eye contact, smiling and nodding aggressively. So to the point where I had to stop doing it because I didn't want attention in class from the teachers. But I have a when someone's talking, I'm like, uh-huh, and my eyes are big and I'm smiling big. I do think there's an immediate response of like this person is friendly.
Hmm.
That comes from that. Outside of that, I feel like when people are easy to laugh, it makes me think that it's going to be an easy
Hmm.
time. So I feel like even when we went axe throwing together, there were like I truly don't care if someone is good at axe throwing. In fact, I will state here I hope to never go again. But but I had a great time because I felt like everyone in our group, well, the majority of the people in our group were showing up and having a good, like making the best of the situation.
Hmm.
And so I'm looking for someone who's not letting whatever the circumstances are really ruin the situation, whether
Hmm.
that's things are not going well at axe throwing, or if it's too hot and you're pretty uncomfortable, or if it's really loud and you're like, I you know you're
Hmm.
just being grumpy about it. And
Hmm.
so someone who seems like they're down to either hang or like, hey, let's find another solution, let's go do something
Yes.
else to solve for this.
And they're
But
not
I
waiting
think
on someone else. Like they're taking responsibility because they recognize that they're responsible for it. Like it's that whole thing that you
yes.
just said about like, actually, I've got to take responsibility. And maybe other people would appreciate me recognizing, oh, this isn't the best like situation. Or like, yeah, how can I, you know, the fact is, I sucked at it like crazy, but I could not care less because I was like,
We had
no,
so
I
much fun.
yeah, I had so much fun at failing at axe throwing. And it was to me, it wasn't even about that. I was like, I actually could just stand here and watch because I'm enjoying watching my friend interact with all of her friends and
Oh
celebrate
yeah.
her for that. And so to me, I guess absolutely that's what I knew you would say. I was like, without a doubt, the smile and your eye contact was so intentional that I was like, those two things alone make someone feel so much more approachable and just someone who you kind of go, oh, you know what, I think I want to be friends with them because they actually
Oh,
look
that's
like they
nice.
are like making me feel seen, because when they look at me they're not like distracted. And yeah, so I think eye contact, and the thing is you weren't like only eye contact, you were literally like your body was facing the person, so it
You were
wasn't like
so
a
observant. This is amazing. I've never had anyone say this to me before.
oh for sure, but also as well because I have to notice it in myself. And because I often travel with carry-on, I am often quite limited. But just even in the way that you were kind of just dressed was in a way of like I'm not like I, not that you weren't like still absolutely superwoman, but it was kind of like a not that power suit at a axe throwing party where it's like I'm here to do business kind of thing. It was just like appropriately dressed for the occasion. And then also like to me, it's like you're not I just obviously the I'm very observant of people who are like this. And I'm like, why are you here if you're like this? So I guess it was just those kind of energies of like holding it with an open hand.
Thank you. I actually have to watch the arms crossed thing because it's a very natural, comfortable position,
Mm-hmm.
and it does not mean that I'm not fully invested in a conversation. So then I have to, oh, let's find it. Let's do something else.
Let's do it with my hands.
Exactly. That's really sweet of you. Thank you. It's incredible that I feel like well-traveled people are so skilled at reading people and the situation. And it's something I've been really grateful to have gotten better at having moved abroad because I was not good at it.
Yes.
And it's like a rapid fire. I've met a lot of new people now and I've gotten better at it. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm still learning to read people in that same way. And your ability to articulate exactly what you were looking for is actually such a skill. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you. But as well, I think it's great and something from coming from, Australia and it being so separated from a lot of things, what has been a great benefit of Europe and what I'm so grateful for Europe and would want everyone to experience is that when you like throw yourself amongst a culture where you're easily sitting in a coffee shop where there's going to be about possibly 7 to 10 different languages going on, you
Hmm.
just still feel a sense of belonging and connection. And that's what I think is can often just help anyone feel like they belong, because a lot of people are there to experience new things. And yeah, you might rather than one person coming from a different culture, you're going to have 7 different cultures coming in, rather than one person coming in from a culture where they're going to feel completely left out. I think that's a great
Yes.
gift about Europe, is that you're kind of like, well, there's about 10 different cultures. So
I do love that. And I feel like I have such a better understanding of where people are coming from now because I've met people from different countries and I'm starting to see patterns in ways that I find so interesting. I find that Americans and Australians come with a similar vibe and a similar openness. And so
mhm.
whenever now this I don't know if this is good or bad, but when I meet an Australian, I'm like, yes. I think this is gonna work for me because there is that openness and that friendliness and the smile and the ease of self-deprecation.
Mm. And okay, so just thank you so much. And from all of this, like my encouragement is to come with a new mindset, because I still love my own company, but I am someone who often travels to new places. And although I love that so much, there is that sense of like, I really do need to put myself out there. And honestly, Therese, our mutual friend, she is such an encourager to do that, but never force it. It's kind of like
Yes.
always an invitation. It's never like a obligation. And I think that's such a beautiful gift that she's brought to my world, and has greatly challenged me in that. But it's made me go, I want to keep traveling. I'm gonna have to, and I am an introvert and I love my own company, but there's definitely those times where I'm like, yeah, but I do want that connection.
Hmm.
Or do I choose to stay in and woe is me? So I just recognize that I'm like, you know what? I am the one to take responsibility for my own enjoyment, and I'm going to go in with a better mindset that people are interesting. And so I want to thank you for those little gems. And I hope whoever's listening is encouraged and will connect with the lovely Michelle and Dan at the, I'll put it in the notes, but at the Lord, remind
Honeymoon
me,
always.
honeymoon always.
Yes.
I'll put it in.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. It was great getting to chat with you again. This was fabulous.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michelle.